Yeah.
get into those mentoring programs early, maybe while you're still in, and start exploring some of the different avenues that might be of interest to you, and use that mentoring experience to say, that's not what I thought it was, or this is exactly what I want, and then pursue it.
You're listening to the 7 Echo Podcast, brought to you by 7 Eagle Group, the place where we highlight inspiring and interesting United States military veterans who have found a successful civilian career after trading in their uniforms.
Anyway, hey everybody, Jordy from 7 Eagle. I am so excited today to be chatting with Harris Morris, just an incredible guy. Served for the U.S. Army as Chief of Operations, went to West Point. Harris is currently a Senior Director of Veterans Initiatives at ADP out of New York City. And Harris, I'm just so excited that you have a few minutes to spend with us today and to share your story and to help our veterans. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jordy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So do you mind telling everyone a little bit about your experience in the Army and what that experience meant to you? And
Yeah, sure. So I did 21 years as an armor officer in the Army, all over the world, lots of different assignments. It was kind of a wild ride for those years, but I think just as I look back on it, all the things that I learned in the military, while I never really understood necessarily how they might apply to the civilian world, once I showed up, I could see where things fit in. But I also could see where there were some challenges, right? With just the difference in culture, the difference in, the things that we took for granted in the military and what may have been out there in the corporate world. So, I can go any direction you want to go in talking about that, because there's so much there, right?
what are some of the best things you got out of serving, and some of the life lessons that stayed with you long after?
So a few things, I think just the importance of the people, right? I think that's probably the greatest takeaway that I had. We don't accomplish anything on our own. It just doesn't happen that way. And it's really, all the successes that I had as an officer was not necessarily what I did, but it was the success of the team. And so that whole teamwork thing and bringing that into corporate America, I just think is so, so important.
Yeah, I know you went from transitioning to JP Morgan. How did you head down that path? What led you to that opportunity?
So, I a lot of times when I talk to folks about kind of triangulating what you want to do next, there's a few different paths you can probably take. There's a geographic one where you want to get back to family, you want to do something like that. There's, you want to go work for a particular company and you go where they are. And then there's kind of a hybrid version where, you look for something in between, and what you want to do in general, but you just find it wherever you're going to go. I went the geographic path because my wife was from northern New Jersey. And so my destiny was predetermined as soon as I got married, that I was coming back to this neck of the woods. And so that's what took me to the finance path, because that was one of the big, things that was in the New York area.
Yeah. Did you and talk about that? Was that a good experience for you, working in finance as your first job? Did you enjoy it? Did it head you
Yeah,
off?
no, any first job that you get is a great job, is what I would tell you, because you need to be able to make that adjustment. And, it's tough. I don't care whether you're a junior enlisted person or a senior officer. When you make that jump into into the corporate world, there's a lot of adjusting that we
Yeah.
all have to do. And so, I learned a lot through that process, and I think that's what all of our first job is to
Yeah.
learn. And, I think in hindsight, as I look back and take a look at the lessons that I learned, I think it's important that, as you're thinking about that next job that you're going to go into, you don't want to have to take it because it's the only one that's out there,
Right.
right? You really want to do your homework and treat this like any other mission that, and put in the time and effort doing your intel gathering and figuring out what's best for you as a next career. So, to circle back to your question, I think I did. I learned a lot. I learned about the things that I like, maybe some of the things that I didn't like, and that's all part of our growth,
Yeah.
post-military.
Which is so valuable. I mean, how would you recommend a veteran going about identifying that passion, that
Yeah.
higher calling for him or herself that's going to get them excited for work and make them feel like they're doing valuable work every day?
Yep. So you said a very key word there. You said purpose,
Yeah.
right? There is no more meaningful calling than serving in the military. It provides more purpose, I think, than you could ever find. At least for me, it was that way, right? And
Yeah.
so when you get out, I think you have to look at what are my values, what are the things that are important to me, and a lot of those values are what we gathered and were built upon in the military. Most of us joined the military at a young age, 18, 19, 20, whatever you were, and those are formative years. So that those values that you gained in the military are with you and it will stick with you forever. So you got to find a corporate environment that will support those values that you're looking at.
Right.
And so, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I would say. And then following on that, I would say, how do you understand about culture of a company, right? I don't work there. How do you know that? So I believe that there's a whole bunch of mentoring programs that are out there. That is the key.
Yeah.
Get into those mentoring programs early, maybe while you're still in, and start exploring some of the different avenues that might be of interest to you, and use that mentoring experience to say, that's not what I thought it was, or this is exactly what I want, and then pursue it. I think that's really mentoring's the most important piece to that. So
Yeah, that's great advice. And not to be nervous about asking people for help, whether you're asking a veteran or a civilian. Most people are more than willing to guide and support, and they're honored or flattered by that.
yeah, Jordy, I'll tell you, I tell all the veterans that I talk to, you can go on LinkedIn, you can do a search of a company, do an advanced search of the company, U.S. Army or
Yeah.
whatever service you were in,
Go from
project manager, whatever it is you're looking for, and find that person. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, 95% of them are going to at least return the call and
Right.
talk to you and give you some advice. You never want to pull the ladder from behind you, right?
Right.
We all want to help one another, and that's something you should take for granted. And it feels weird because
Yeah.
we're not used to reaching out to people
Ask.
blindly that we don't know, but
Right.
you got to do it, and you got to
Yeah.
get comfortable doing it.
Yeah. I just feel I agree with that 100%. It's just to ask people who are doing that job you might want to do, and just ask them, what do you like, what do you don't like? I just think is so incredibly valuable. And then I'll talk a little bit about, because one thing because we talk to so many veterans with their job search, and a lot of them I notice um, we're doing one MOS in the military, and then they feel like they have to do that, like that's all they're qualified to do in the
Yeah.
civilian world, and that I feel like they can do so many other things, but they feel like they're pigeonholed maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I see that a lot as I talk to veterans like you do. What I would say is think about what are the skills, the transferable skills that you've learned, and one of the biggest ones that always jumps to mind for me is just project management,
Hmm.
right? When we go in the military and we're executing missions on a day-to-day basis, what are we actually doing in that process? We're managing resources, which is our people. We've got some kind of budget that we're working against, that you can't exceed. You run into problems that you have to raise the flag on, and let people higher than there's a problem.
Hmm.
You're our military service members are doing that all the time, but they don't think of it that way. They think, oh, I'm a truck driver, or
Yeah.
I'm this, or I'm that, right? That's not. There's so much more to it that are transferable skills. The other thing I'd say is a lot of times focus on, most military members have additional duties. So while you may have been, X in whatever military service you're serving, maybe you had a special duty where you were a recruiter, or you did something with, you know, EEO. You've got these extra skills that are valued
Right.
out there in corporate America, but sometimes that was my extra duty. That doesn't really matter, but it does. It really
Yeah.
does. And some of your transferable skills will come from those additional duties that you had.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And there's so many free resources out there today for somebody who's hungry to go into a new career path. You can teach yourself virtually, anything, and get that experience or those certifications that you might need.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of free resources out there,
Yeah,
to gain those credentials, because that helps.
right,
If you think about it from the veterans, or I'll say from a employer's perspective, there's a lot of veterans out there looking to get out and looking for jobs, and a lot of their profiles are very similar,
right,
right? So what is a veteran doing to set themselves apart from the other veterans
right,
as they're looking for jobs? And those credentials become critical. That
right.
becomes a differentiator to help you advance. And when you can get those things for free, and if you plan far enough in advance, get them before you even get out of the military.
Yeah,
Be ready to go when you hit the ground.
yeah, that's smart. I know you have evaluated tons of veterans for positions in the corporate world and tons of civilians as well. What are some of your favorite tips, your suggestions, that either things that people should do or pitfalls, stuff they should avoid?
So I'm going to go back to what a recruiter told me in my early days, which it was very valuable advice, and I still share that with others. Um, when you're going to career fairs and going to those various events, this is a planned mission that you go out to do, right? A lot of times I'll have veterans come up and just say, hey, I was in the Air Force, I was in the Navy, I was in the Army. What kind of jobs do you have for me?
Mhm.
Right. And you got to do a little bit of homework, because we've got lots of jobs, but make it easy on the recruiter. Do your homework in advance, research the company, understand maybe what jobs are actually available, and come to that virtual career fair or in-person career fair and say, hey, I was looking at job, you know, rec number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, project manager. I think I'm a great fit for it. That makes it really, really easy
Right.
for the recruiter to immediately start connecting the dots on the spot and put you at the front of the list. So, you know, I unfortunately was one of those ones saying, "Hey, I'm an Army guy. What do you got for me?"
Yeah.
And that doesn't help. You got to do better than that.
Yeah.
And so,
That's good. And it sort of circles back to your advice earlier about networking. It's like, when you start reaching out to people, ask them for advice. Don't ask them for a job. Don't go right at them. Hey, yeah, but what do you have for me? Here's my resume. People will get the hint that you're looking, and, you know,
yep, that whole word of exploratory, right?
yeah,
It's you're out there just wanting to learn. And that's I think you're spot on. The
yeah,
first comment, you shouldn't be saying, "Hey, I'm looking for work,"
right,
and you're desperately looking for work.
right. Yeah,
Try to make those connections early on, and keep those connections, going.
Yeah, that's great. We work with tons of employers, whether CEO or VP or HR director. Most of them are civilians. Um, what advice would you have for them about why they should hire a veteran? What does a veteran bring to the table, to their workforce, to their team?
Sure. So right off the top, obviously, there's this diversity thing that people will think of veterans as a diverse group, but even inside of veterans, right, it's an extremely diverse set of people. So, I think that's one of the big things that you need to highlight. I would say also looking at kind of diversity of thought, right?
Mhm.
And how a veteran may approach a problem as part of a larger team is beneficial to the larger organization. There's usually a corporate way of going at problem solving, and sometimes veterans come in and have a just based on their military experience can provide a value to the company of like, have you ever thought about something like this or
Yeah,
this way? So, I think those are kind of two that right off the top. Obviously, they've got lots of transferable skills that they bring,
yeah,
whether that be the leadership component or just dealing with people. I was having a conversation the other day with a veteran, and we were talking about, like HR departments. There's a whole group of people that do that in corporate America,
yeah,
right? Whereas in the military, every one of us as a leader was that HR person for
yeah,
our platoon, for our company, our
yeah,
battalion, whatever it was, our squad. That was our responsibility. So we kind of understand those things inherently.
yeah.
And so, again, those are things that are valuable out there in the corporate world. So
Yeah. What about like the the perseverance of a veteran, like to never give up? That's ingrained in you, right? All throughout your
absolutely.
training and your, it's not like quit is not a word that veterans use, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I take that for granted.
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't even throw it out there as a veteran, but
Yeah,
it definitely is one of those things. I mean, it's you've got a mission, you got to get it done. You're going to do it legally and correctly in the most efficient way possible.
yeah,
And you know, that's kind of just in our DNA as veterans. So yeah, I mean, and I think honestly, I think most people understand that
yeah,
that may not have served. They understand that you're going to get the stuff done, and they see that. I think the leadership in the company would see that.
yeah. Do you feel a veteran working in a company with mostly civilians could raise the level of the performance of the civilians? That attitudes, those character traits can rub off on other people.
Of course, I think it's it's always important. When I think about just diversity and inclusion in general, right? Whether that be veterans or any other diverse group, it's that whole thing of inclusiveness and being allowed to bring your whole self to work. And
Yeah,
if that's what you do as a veteran, and that's who you are and what you are, if you have an inclusive environment that allows you to do that, absolutely, it'll help raise everybody.
yeah, yeah. Harris, I can't thank you enough for this. This is the sharing your story and all these great tips. I just love this about you, how you just care so deeply about your fellow soldiers and paying it forward and helping the men and women who, a lot of them might be struggling right now, out of work,
Yeah.
underemployed. Just they need to hear stories like this. So thank you so much for coming on and spend a few minutes with me today.
My pleasure, Jordy. Thanks for having me.